Awesome.
Just have to talk to the breaker thing. And she announced it on her Instagram on Sunday, but because it's a 10-day quarantine for her, she's not able to compete. She competed last night. So what they did was Judge Cody and Cheryl on their practice rehearsal, which they were 24 out of 40, which is pretty decent. Yeah, saved them for a week because the karate kid got booted Monday night. Yeah, I picked up on the day, so Monday night they were kicked out, and so they're safe for now. Hopefully by that point they'll both be negative and complete. And yeah, it's perfect. We want to see them dance because it's working. Well,
Okay, a few more people coming in.
He's in a box. He's in a box. I would love to be back there. You're out there. So he's going. Okay. All right. Britney update this week because we have a documentary that came out over the weekend. I watched it. And I think it was actually more disturbing, right? It really was. So controlling Britney Spears, and then they revealed that
who's got their TV on in the background?
Black box security.
I do.
Okay.
I'm muted.
Okay.
She was taking her medication. She was on a lot of medication. Of course. Yeah. Her boyfriend Sam, who was now her fiance, could not take and post any pictures without Dad's approval. They had security following them and spying on her with everything that she did. She was ripped away from.
Okay, Kevin.
Yep.
It's 3 minutes after, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to pull up the slides
Yep.
and then just let me know what you want to see next. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining this afternoon, everybody. I know we've been talking to each of you like individually in smaller groups, but we got kind of a critical mass worth of things to work on. And so this task force is critical. As I'm sure you guys have been watching Congress fight over whether or not they're going to do the infrastructure deal or the reconciliation package, et cetera, or have a budget. And, you know, as we've all talked about, the biggest problem for minorities and especially African Americans is getting their share of the money, right? That's what this whole process has been about, us fighting to make sure we're not left out of what will probably be a historic amount of spending investment by the government over the next, 10 years through these two big projects. So I'm going to not belabor the preamble and jump right into what we're working on. So the first thing is, Brady, go ahead and pull up the first one. So we've got a letter that we're going to send to the director of FEMA. Some of you already agreed to sign on, but we want to make sure the rest of you guys see it. Can you pull up the letter, Brady? Brady, are you there still? Okay, there you are. All right, so this letter is pretty simple. We're just asking that the FEMA director work hard, work with us or work in general to make sure more minorities are given prime contracting opportunities in this, this disaster relief. So from California, where there are wildfires, to the Gulf Coast, where there have been hurricanes, where there's been flooding and drought, wherever the FEMA is actually working, we want to make sure that they bring in more minority contractors as both construction, suppliers, water, trucking. We have some truck drivers or trucking companies who are part of this task force, and they can't get the contracts to deliver stuff. So there's probably $1 billion worth of money being spent just on suppliers for this FEMA relief, and we're trying to make sure we raise the attention of the FEMA director that there's not even close to a fair share is going to minority contractors. So if all of you, we'll reach out to you. Everyone check your email. You'll all get an email asking if you're willing to sign on to this letter. And if you are, please just respond. Brady, the email will come from Brady and I'll probably be copied on it, but just respond, yes, please add my name. We'd like to get this letter out by the end of the week. There's a lot going on, but we just think we need to get the letter in and then probably ask for a meeting with FEMA or something along those lines, or get them to direct us to the locals, because we've reached out. So we've been contacted by several local contractors who are part of our network saying, this FEMA work, who do we contact to get some of this FEMA work? And so we're working backwards from starting at the top and working our way down to make sure those locals are sensitive to this process. Okay. All right, Brady, what's the next thing I think is the Cleveland project?
That is correct. One moment.
Were you able to pull up the video?
Oh, no, it didn't really work that well. So
Okay, no worries.
we're going to
So,
get the live version of it.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Steele in a second here, but we are, as part of this process, we've asked, anytime we hear about an injustice going on in the contracting or government funding space, we take it on and we put a letter together or some activity, and then we're asking everyone else to join in. So here our brethren in Cleveland are having a fight with Sherwin-Williams because Sherwin-Williams is building a really big plant there. It's about $1 billion plant. And they, out of the $1 billion, about 600 million of that is federal, state, and local funding, but they haven't hired any prime minority contractors or developers of color in the process. So we're raising this, we're reaching out to the Congressional Black Caucus, but we're also reaching out to the Justice Department and some of the oversight offices to talk about this issue. So I'm gonna turn those, Dr. Steele, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, so please take over.
Well, thank you so much, people. It's really sad at this day and time. And I just got back from Cleveland a few days ago. For the last 2 weeks, I've been going back and forth to Cleveland. And it's a situation where Sherwin-Williams is raising its ugly head as this country has been for many of years. And many are African Americans, Black folks, colored folks, Negroes, white folks, Black and brown people, the inclusiveness of all Americans in terms of racism. We have not addressed this issue. And racism is alive and well. I was just reading just a few minutes ago about the memorial marker for Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi, outside of Greenwood, where people are still shooting up the memorial sign of Emmett Till. And that happened many of years ago, which is not that many years, or around 1955, in terms of him being tortured, lynched, and ultimately murdered by the Ku Klux Klan and racist white folks. And what I'm saying is that we have this going on in corporate America in terms of not giving African Americans any managerial aspect, any first tier partnership in terms of what's going on with the $1 billion project that's going on with Sherwin-Williams. And we all have used Sherwin-Williams throughout our lives in terms of the paint. It's the paint industry. You're talking about being in business in Cleveland, Ohio for 155 years. 155 years. They have no prime African-American Black contractors that's in a decision-making position with this erection of a world-class that they're bragging about how it's going to add to the skyline of Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland, Ohio has been abandoned by at least 700,000 people over the last 10, 15 years, where they used to have 1 million people. Now they're down to roughly 350 in terms of losing 700,000 people. Now they're down to 350,000 in terms of the population that they have lost. And it's due to, and they still have the escalation of crime. And it's due to the fact that there are no inclusiveness in terms of their bringing about an opportunity of fairness to the African-American community. Cleveland, Ohio is 51% African-American, Black. And as I mentioned, you're talking about losing 700,000 people because of the lack of the infrastructure of jobs and the managerial aspect of being a prime contractor in terms of this project and other projects. But this is the main one. And if we don't stop and bring about an attention given to Cleveland for the whole world to see that racism is alive and well within this country, and it's in corporate America. we had the transatlantic African slave trade because of corporate America, pretty much. You know, America always stick its chest out saying that we're the wealthiest country in the world. Well, my Lord, you let me not pay my 15 employees and bring about a slavery type of mentality or environment within the company or the organization that I'm head of, not only my private business, but here at the Southern Princeton Leadership Conference, then I will have a little wealth too. You know, reparation could come in the forms of giving contracts that's needed and should be awarded to certified, qualified Black contractors. So I'll pause here because, Keith, I'm pretty sure someone want to ask me a question.
Well, we'll save questions till the end. So we got 4 more issues, and they all tie together. So we're gonna run through the issues, and then we will let people ask questions as we go through it. So to put a finer point on this particular, the Cleveland example is like a very stark and prominent example of what we're talking about when we're asking for the changes in the way block grants and stuff are worked. So keep that in mind as we move forward to the next two.
Right, and can I add before you move on?
Sure.
When you're talking about the federal, state, and local governments, it's really simple. And we have Black elected officials in the federal government and the state government and local government. And you talking about half of the money. You're talking about at least 600 million of those dollars on $1 billion project coming from the federal, state, and local governments. Mm-hmm. All we need to have are the courageousness of people of color and fair-minded thinking people of all ethnicity and background to stand up and say this is not right, and you're not going to use the public money, public tax dollars in a discriminatory practice that you are implementing.
So if it was only that easy, Dr. Steele, we'd all be rich, right? So that's
but that's like somebody told me the other day, said if all church folks would do what they're supposed to do, we can solve the world problem.
All in one day.
All in one day. Absolutely.
So Brady, can you pull up the next slide? Okay. So we've written an op-ed about almost to the point of this Cleveland. This ties into our whole narrative about block grants not being effective. So I've shared this op-ed with everyone. I don't really need anyone to do anything. If you have any local, like if any of you have local newspapers that, we could take this and we can put your name on it and send it to your local papers to get them to run it if you guys think it's something you're interested in. But we want to keep spreading this narrative about how block grants, how any of the state money never makes it to minorities, and that the block grant format is a horrible way to distribute money, because again, they're going to be distributing this $5 trillion mostly through block grants. So, I think we've got State Rep Hakeem from Tennessee on there. I always use Tennessee as an example, but he brought us into Tennessee to work on this project. And at the end of the day, we found that Tennessee had $700 million in unspent workforce money. So that's just an abuse of the block grant process, or the same with dealing with PPP programs and any of the other COVID money that never made its way down to any of the minority institutions or companies. So again, I'm not saying you have to, but if anyone has an inclination to try to get an op-ed published, we would be glad to try to help you get this one published under your name and one of your local papers. Go ahead, Brady, to the next one. Who are we looking at, Brady?
What's that?
Someone's face coming on the screen. Okay, there we go. All right. So the next one.
Okay, the next one is the the block grant. Okay, reverse discrimination. Here, I got it.
Yeah. So this is, and we had a meeting on this. We wrote this piece about a month ago, and we're talking about all the lawsuits that have been filed against Black people by white people for reverse discrimination. So as we try to tie in all these all tie in together. So it's an overarching kind of umbrella of issues that interconnect as we try to, if we're going to have any success in combating or being successful in getting money pushed down. And so basically what we're saying here is that every time the government does try to help, so say Dr. Steele is successful in putting pressure on Sherwin-Williams or the government in Ohio to make contracts available to minorities, inevitably some group of white people are going to sue, saying it's reverse discrimination. So we've got three examples here. One is the Black farmers. So the government gave Black farmers debt relief, and then a bunch of white farmers sued saying that was reverse discrimination. Then the Small Business Administration did a set aside for minority businesses for a 30-day window to apply so the big businesses wouldn't crowd them out. Then a bunch of white people sued, so that was reverse discrimination. And then most recently, the SEC said that there should be rules that would encourage or require board diversification in corporate America. And then a group of white people sued, said that was reverse discrimination. We were taking this as an opportunity to talk to Congress about reform of this process, but also we're now going to take it a step further. And this is where everyone's help on this. This is something we are asking. We will take up the work, but we'll need your names. Every person on this call, whatever city or state you're in, we'd like for you to send a letter to the Justice Department, asking the Justice Department to review the way your state is using federal money, block grant money, or contracting with minorities. Because we believe that one, we'll find this discriminatory just based on the numbers. The numbers won't lie. It'll be like less than 2% of contracts will have gone to minorities in your state through federal contracts, and none of them will be prime contracts. So I think, is Charles Brooks on the call? Do you see Charles Brooks on there, Brady?
No, there's a few phone numbers.
Would you say, Charles?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you go, Charles. So Charles is general counsel of SCLC, and he kind of helped us structure this request. Charles, do you want to run down like the way in which we're approaching this and using the government's legal authority to oversee states when they've been discriminatory?
Correct. One of the things that all of these cases hallmark is affirmative action in an illegal sense, not speaking to it, whether that's my personal constitutional belief, because it's not, is that you're not affecting somebody's remedy, you're giving it because of race. That's per se illegal, triggering strict scrutiny. So one way around that is when you can have a remedy for an action. That was one of the reasons why the Black farmers case is a little bit different, in my opinion, and why I got through the first time, because it was remedying the discrimination that they faced. So how do we leap this forward? The leap forward is to have the triggers and the ties to what happens within a state to create a remedy based upon these contracts. So I'll break it down even further than that. The theory goes this way, this simple. When you have evidence of a state enacting or engaging in items that show that they've engaged in discriminatory activity, the Justice Department can take a look at it. If you have that, and then they have contracting, then you have a reason to look at the contracting by the state through block grants and how they're spending the money. I.e., and I'll give a very specific example. If you have a state that has restricted voter rights that negatively affects their minorities, if you have a state that's not using its police power in Native American lands, those are very specific things that happen right now, not in some future or the past. It's a right now problem. What's the right now remedy? Well, part of it is they can't affect response because they don't have access to these contracts. So we know you're a bad actor based upon what you did here, and they have these contracts which you're not giving out in a fair and disseminating manner. The remedy is based upon your present action, not some past discrimination post up, not some kind of different thing dealing with the past, and not because somebody's Black, brown, or whatever. It's about how you treated these Black, brown people right now in your state, in your city, in your county. And then leaning on the Justice Department to say, okay, these are the actors who you're allowing to handle federal funds. That's per se illegal. You already have systems in place to govern what that means. Use them to make sure that there's a fair allocation, not for any affirmative action reasons, but for the reason of you're allowing the bad actor to be a decision maker. That is something that we haven't done yet. That's the new legal strategy that we've been pushing forward.
So thanks, Charles. And Charles, you will work and we'll come up with a draft of a letter, correct? Like a template
Sure.
that people can use. Yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, so in the way, you guys may not heard what he said here, but you know, the key is we're breaking new ground. We've actually with SCLC and a lot of you here on the call and all of y'all have been instructive in this because we've traveled around, been to your states or heard your problems. And so we've come to this realization, you know, I've got Reverend McCullough and Mr. Mills from Roanoke Valley SCLC in North Carolina. And they were telling me how when they built solar farms, no Black farmers had their land used for this process, right? So we're taking all these scenarios and we're building up a case study that we can then use with Charles's help to write a letter that you guys can send to the Justice Department saying, look at our state, and we'll come up with 4 or 5 examples of things that have happened, that are happening, and why the Justice Department needs to weigh in. So that's the goal. I know it's a lot of work, but we think it's worth doing, and it's also like the only way forward to stop these guys from suing every time the government tries to help us. So
Exactly.
thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Everyone, real quick, we're going to take a picture in a moment, like we did before. If you're able to turn your camera on, if you could, and then after the next section, I'm going to take a picture. If you're in a place where you can't, that's understandable, or you don't want to, but we would like to get a picture of everyone. In fact, I see them all coming. I'm just going to do it right now. So, but don't smile because we're mad, remember? So, okay, here we go. Okay, one more. Okay, thank you, Kevin.
All right, thanks, guys. Okay, so now the last piece is, what's the last piece?
That was
Okay. All right, so that because I covered both together. Okay.
The special
So,
report was the
the
last.
special report tied into this. So, guys, now I'm going to open up. Now there is, you know, I want to open up to questions. I now know that if any of y'all have questions, we'll start answering them now, and then you know, we'll circle back with y'all. But I'm finished pretty much with my presentation. So, any ideas, any questions or comments?
If you have a question or comment, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak freely.
Oh wait, I do one special guest I want to acknowledge. State Rep Hakeem just joined us from Tennessee. So he is like, he got us started on this by making us work on that doggone workforce project. So after we did all the work, the governor still wouldn't spend the money. So Rep Hakeem, what do you guys see? I mean, you're in the legislature down there. What are you guys hearing, and how do you think this strategy will benefit or potentially affect the way Tennessee works?
Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. Here in Tennessee, what we've been able to do with a coalition of other people is to move that money, that 700 million you spoke of, in a position where it go out into the community and be used by small businesses but in the form of grants.
Okay.
That will be utilized to improve the lives of people in the community. And that fund will maintain about 200 million in it from year to year.
Okay.
So it has been helpful, this process, the information, the partnerships to assist us in getting this money in a posture where it can be distributed into the community.
Now, now in Tennessee, do you guys have contracting problems there? I mean, will you guys write a letter to the Justice Department, you think stir more money to be flowed out of the state to the community?
No problem. More than willing to do that.
Okay, awesome. All right, thanks. All right, anybody else have any questions? Thanks, Representative King. I appreciate your time.
Kevin,
Yes.
Kevin, this is my question that I asked. You know, historically speaking, the nonviolence movement was very successful, and the Let It Rain campaign is successful. At what point do we put together an economic campaign and say we don't and start boycotting these companies and anything and everything that we do?
You know, I'm all for boycotts, economic boycotts. I don't, you know, we're not, you know, FSIC and our group of people, we're not, to organize a boycott would take more resources than we actually have. We're not set for that. That's a big one. We'd have to be very strategic. I'm not opposed to doing it. If someone if some groups join together and they want us to join with them, we'd be perfectly happy to join with them. But that takes a network that's way deeper than even than what we have. And we have a really good group of people, but that's a deep process. Our hope is, William, that if we can enlist the Justice Department, there'll be a big enough stick that we
Right.
won't that we'll be able to affect change with a more targeted effort. But like everyone should stop buying Sherwin-Williams paint, as far as I'm concerned. I think that's a good example, but I don't.
Sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. It looks like an issue with the router and echo device, so try starting them. Unplug both of them, then plug the router.
Great. Okay. Anybody else have any more questions?
Can I ask a really naive question, because I'm not an attorney? And this is for Attorney Brooks and for you, Kevin. The non-minority groups are very easily and very quickly able to sue the minority groups for reverse discrimination based on the laws. Why can't the minority groups sue for discrimination based on the distribution of the assets since for the last 100 years, or the distribution of funding? Has that been tried? Or and I feel really naive asking this, but it has to be asked.
No, it's not a naive question. First thing is you got to deal with statute of limitations. So that's the first thing you got to deal with. Number two, you're suing a federal entity. So you have to be very careful about how you do it and what's the reason ongoing. Now, the exception for it was really in the tribal case about those oil rights, where the government had basically stolen money for about 100 years from those rights. What the judge ruled in that case was, you're still stealing money. It's not that you stole money 40 years ago. You're stealing money now. You stole money last month. You've been stealing money forever since the dawn of this particular treaty. That was a very controversial ruling, but under the Clinton administration, I want to say, somebody didn't file a response, so it became law. So there's some unique circumstances when you're doing it and it has occurred. The other issue is, what's the prospective actor in this? And that's one of the real problems with suing the federal government. Let's assume that a storm comes through and it devastates the Delta in Mississippi, and you use almost no minority contractors in a place with about 70% minority is the population base. Well, the question is, A, case is going to ask, who are the actors? Number two, who are the ones who are restricted? And the government begins to pass the buck about who's the decision maker, who had it, who applied for it, why didn't they apply, how did they not know about it? We open it up to everybody, and it just becomes a quagmire. Now, none of that keeps you from filing a lawsuit about it, but you have to find the people in time and be willing to file, and you're filing in those districts. Now, that's a problem the civil rights action movement has had for decades, which is filing about extreme discrimination in districts where you get jury nullification. You know, one of the reasons why lynchings didn't result in many convictions for a very long time, you had all white jurors saying that's not a problem. So you have some similar problems in terms of these actions in federal court. Now, can you still bring them? Yes, you can, especially under the circumstances we're talking about, direct evidence. However, it's a lot easier to construct a payout that evades some of these issues, that addresses a present harm, doing it that way to make it extremely difficult to bring these lawsuits, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, the question is about which federal judge is sitting there. People who are on the outside looking in are like, oh, well, federal judges. Well, the appointment of federal judges has become extremely politicized, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. So you're going to have a real tough time if you get the wrong one, who's not going to force you to go all the way up the chain and saying that you're not engaging in a strict scrutiny circumstance, that you're actually remedying a harm that you found.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Charles. I mean, that's why I hate having these calls without you, because what we're doing, we are, like I said, we're breaking new ground, and we have to, and for
Brady,
all on the call.
Yeah, Brady,
Richard,
I have.
Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have an answer for you. I was part of a lawsuit against the SBA some years ago, in the last 10 years. And the answer to your question is really money. Now, a group of us sued the SBA. They had a special program called the FSIC, and over the last 20 years, 20 plus years, they hadn't given any licenses to African American fund managers. Now, we settled the lawsuit, but it took, God knows, 7 or 8 years to go through the process. It got to the point where they didn't want to disclose all the information because the information showed how discriminatory they were. So, I mean, the problem is you got to have the staying power and the money to sue the federal government. Yeah, we won because they agreed to settle. But, you know, if I were in charge of the lawsuit, I was just a part of the lawsuit, you know, I would have brought it to the public forum so people could have understood how, you know, how discriminatory the SBA has been over the years to people of color.
Yeah.
But the answer is money. I mean, you know, these white groups got money and, you know, the black groups don't have enough money. I mean, we spent probably close to $1 million trying to win this lawsuit. So who has that type of discretionary money, you know, to risk, especially if you're suing the federal government. So there needs to be some type of, you know, slush fund, if you will, that allows people to sue the federal government and other state and local governments because we know they are discriminating left and right. I mean, every day of the week. So, so that's the answer to your question, Brett.
Okay,
Charles,
thank
question for you. In these federal lawsuits, that you know, what if so if we start working, if we are able to successfully get the Justice Department to review and do something, and there's a suit to be had, and we actually file a suit, would the plaintiffs, if victorious, get attorney's fees in any of these cases? I mean,
that's how you typically get it under 1988. Okay. So if you apply and you have quote unquote a substantial victory, so if you bring a lawsuit and you get a substantial victory, you get it. If the judge in their discretion feels like you're 50% or less successful in terms of your ask, then they don't have to give you a dime. So if you ask for a lot or ask for quote unquote too much, and who's to say what that is when somebody suffered and they haven't made contracts, you don't necessarily get those 1988s. And if you do, and I've had a few of these, where the judge says, well, why do you want so much money? It's like, you got to be kidding me. So that's part of it. And a lot of that, look, it comes down to who's the judge that you have.
Yeah.
So if you have a judge who's written a bunch of stuff about how affirmative action is garbage, and then they're all sitting on the bench, you know, there's not too many guesses about what you're going to face in both your discovery stage, your motion stage, and all those other particular stages of action.
Right. So, I mean, so for now, the way we're approaching this is probably the cleanest way with going after the Justice Department, or is there something else we're not thinking of?
I wouldn't even call it going after the Justice Department, just asking them to use the mechanisms that they already have.
Yeah, right.
We should now theoretically have friends in the Justice Department that says, you know what, you're right. These are tools in our tool belt that we can use, because it's not like we're asking them to do things new.
Right.
It's already there that if there's discrimination, but there's so much focus on discrimination from contractors who are already hired, majority how they treat their Black employees. Okay, that's one thing, and we should be mindful of that. But you also have a tool in your tool belt for the actual contracting process if it's discriminatory. And just the Justice Department just doesn't use it and hasn't used it for many a decade, probably going back to Carter.
Yeah, I have another question, and I've over my lifetime, I've been in a lot of scrimmages with the federal government, the universities, as well as corporations. And you know, one thing you have to understand with corporations is you know, a lawsuit to them is just, hey, they got all types of legal, they're gonna pay them anyway. So, you know, the best way to do it, I think, one way of doing it is you almost have to embarrass them into doing things. You gotta somehow develop a strategy to hurt their brand. The only thing they're interested in, these corporate CEOs, is their brand. And if you could find a way and a mechanism to consistently hurt their brand, and I know that you have to be very strategic from a legal standpoint to do that, that's the way to get them to respond. I mean, Kevin knows how a good example is what's happening up in Minnesota. Kevin and I have had several conversations with the governor and the group that we're working with, as well as the commissioner of the major Hennepin County. And Minnesota has been so embarrassed that the governor and the commissioner of the largest county in Minnesota are coming to us, telling us that, hey, we got all this money from the federal government, we don't know how to spend it. Help us figure it out. How much money do you want? So, I mean, this George Floyd thing is something that we all can lean on. But you gotta, and the problem with Minnesota is now young white people don't want to come to Minnesota to work for these major corporations. There's 20 Fortune 500 companies in Minnesota, and they don't want to come. So, I mean, it's hurting their bottom line. That's the only language that they understand, the bottom line. So many of these strategies that you're talking about implementing have to emphasize, how do you affect their bottom line? Because that's the only language that they speak. Whether or not it's the government, whether or not it's a state government, whether or not it's a county, whether or not it's a city, whether or not it's a corporation. Strategies have to be developed to do one thing. How do you hurt their brand, which inevitably will hurt their bottom line? Otherwise, they're not going to listen.
Kevin, let me jump in, okay?
Go ahead.
Because I'm gonna have to leave in a minute.
Yeah, we have 7 minutes left, folks. So
okay, but I applaud all of the comments. But I believe in direct action, and what was just said is focus upon what we are not doing. And I commend, what's the gentleman's name that just spoke?
Richard Vinegar?
Yes, I commend him as well as others, but I commend him. He was the last one that spoke. As you know, I've been dealing with corporate America a long time. And my cliche is, politics has never freed the oppressed. The oppressed must free politics. You can't expect no politician to go out there and do what is right, black, white, green, or blue, because they are in a systemic racist system. And no Democrat or Republican can free us. It's never been done. We're gonna have to free the system, Democrat or Republican. We don't want to do the heavy lifting. It's hard work, man. Get out there on the corner, get on the preacher out there with the Bible, ain't nobody listening to him. But one day he gonna get a crowd. They're gonna say, this man been standing there for a long time. Jesus had a big crowd, a big crowd. He had more than 12 disciples. You know what they were saying when they left and he ended up with his 12? He keep on saying the same thing. We ain't gonna follow him. We have to keep on saying the same thing. This system is racist and can't be afraid of saying it. So I've dealt with some major corporations and got some victories. So I know we got 2 or 3 minutes left, but the point is, go back to the basis of the foundation. I tried to play a little football in high school. The coach every Monday say, let's go back to the basis. We have left the basis, and it's not politics, it's us collaborating together.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, amen. Amen to that.
Yeah. Well, so
Yes, sir.
thank you guys all for being on this call. I don't want to take up more time than we have to. I know everyone's busy, and I thank y'all.
Let the church say amen.
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 Well, Keegan, I have one more comment. So
Amen,
everyone,
Dr. Steve.
Yes.
all right, everybody, if you could send me an email letting me know which of these projects you support so that we can put your name and title and company, we'd really appreciate it. I have a slide here that I want to show, because We can't, Keevan and I came up with this. We're all in this together or we are not in this at all. And if we don't start to do more advocacy and take more direct action.
That's right.
So I get too often, and we have run into this over and over. Well, I really want to support you, but I don't want to cause any waves. I don't want my company to be seen. And if that's the case and you're going to lose business, I get it. But if you could take a minute and give us an email using permission to use your name on one or all of these projects. I sent the agenda to everybody. It really does matter. And if we could get you when we send the letter out, everybody's busy. But if we don't do this, there's going to be $350 billion a year that are going to go to the usual suspects. And we're all going to be sitting back going, man, we should have done this. We should have done this. We should have done this. And you know what? It won't matter. So I can't thank you enough for being on here today and listening to me spout about that, but it is that important. So,
well, Brady, do you have Brady? This is you do have a blanket for Smart Tech Management Solution, Vice President Smart Tech Management Solution, and so you do you need for me to send that on from our website or?
No, if you're telling me it's okay, I'll just put you down.
Yeah, okay. Well, you good. You already know we're good.
And is that William Baker?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Dr. Steele?
One and only.
Good to see you. And same for me, Brady. Same for me.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Steele.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Me too, Kimmel.
Okay.
Brady.
Dr. McCullough, okay, we'll put you on. All right, awesome.
Yes,
And
sir.
also me, James Mill. I'd like to just comment, a very short comment, but some of us are on boards of different organizations, and some people are county commissioners, or town commissioners, and so forth. They have to push to make sure that in the positions that they're in, that they make sure that Black people get contracts.
That's right.
That's right. We have so many Black people.
Think he cut off.
Do
do not do that. They seem to be hesitant about doing that, and we have to. We must do that in order to get what we need for our community.
Yeah. Well, again, if you target them, you tell us who to talk to. We are always willing to keep doing these meetings and dragging people along because people sometimes feel isolated. They don't. One reason why we do this big call with everybody from everywhere is so everyone knows that what's going on in Cleveland is also going on in Minnesota. That everyone thinks their problems are their own, right. And they're not. They are part of a collective set of problems. So I think people need to know that. That's sort of why we actually force everyone to get on a call every now and again, so that people in Tennessee don't think they're the only ones suffering. Or the people in Minnesota, don't think they're the only ones suffering. Everyone, I think we had guys from New Jersey were on the call earlier, that they were on the call, the trucking people, like everyone feels like they're their own separate problem, but everyone's got the same exact problem, which is the strategy we're trying to work on. And that's why,
problem, Keevan, the problem is racism.
Yes.
America has never been healed from racism. You must always, repetition is the mother of skill. You must always say that.
Yep.
Racism is destroying the fabric of the so-called history of success of this country, because we've never been healed, Black, white, green, or blue. We must have a healing process, and it's destroying the infrastructure of what we were founded upon.
Okay, everybody, we're at time. We're obviously going to go a minute over. But Keevan, do you want any final comments?
But someone asked how they could get a link to the call. So Brady, if you could send everybody on the email, everybody on the call, the link so they could get on. And we will have everybody. We'll circle back with everybody and make sure we get your permission to sign you on to things. And hopefully by Friday we'll be able to send these letters out. And then our goal is to go see Congress and whatever else we need to do. So thank y'all, and we'll see y'all soon.
Keevan and Brady, can you guys stay for 10 minutes after? 5 minutes after?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Ophelia, I'll see you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Dan.